This week, I'm making my version of the Spider-Man No Way Home poster in Photoshop. I don't know about y'all, but I'm super excited for Spider-Man No Way Home to come out. This is one of the things I've been waiting on forever. It seems like everybody is in this movie, and rumor would have you believe that all the villains are there. So, having no idea who's actually going to be in it, this is my attempt to create a poster based on what I've heard and seen. The beginning of this is actually me spending about 6 hours on a composition that I ended up hating, so I completely changed it. But I figured I'd keep that in just to show you kind of where I started. And once I knew I wasn't going with that original idea, I had to go back to the background because I had left that pretty hard edge. It was all hidden by the spider web, so it didn't matter anyway. So this is my process of just going back and softening that up. First thing I have to do is start blending everything together. I'm going to drop my brush. I'm just going to mask things out. So I'll drop the brush down to a small opacity, and then I'll go through each one of my background layers and kind of test, see where it is, and then start masking things out. So I'm really liking what I have here for the background. I think my next step will be start bringing in characters now that I've changed the entire composition, get everything a little bit resituated, and then start doing some blending between everything. I did have these other Spider-Men, fully masked ones, and I figured maybe I would try them in the composition instead of the ones that I feel are a little bit more easily recognizable because they have all of their faces. So I'll try that a little bit, but I think ultimately I'm going to end up sticking with the ones who have their faces exposed just for recognizability. With my composition all set, I think it's time to start going in and adding some breakup between the layers. I figured because it's Mysterio that I have as kind of the overarching puppet master here, I can do layers of that green fog he has. And I do a layer behind every other character just to separate them out, give them some distance. I take those layers and I drop the opacity down as they go farther and farther back into space, just because there'll be less and less contrast. But I think this is an excellent way to make sure that everybody stands out and that nothing becomes too overbearing or lost in the background. With the composition set up nicely, my next step will be to make this illusion magic coming out of Mysterio's hands. You can see I just add some beams and then some glow to that. I'll then go in and add some smoke and vapor, just trying to kind of match what I saw from what they had in the movies. This is going to be used as my primary light source, and it's going to be green from both sides. Normally you would have like a green and a red or a blue and an orange, just to give some contrasting light sources from each side. But I wanted to try this single light source with the green. It'll make it a little bit harder, but I think altogether it'll probably look pretty good. And then with my primary light source done, I'm going to go in and add some secondary lights. So lasers coming out of Doc Ock's arms, bump up Doctor Strange's magic a little bit, and then add some electricity for Electro, just to give myself some other highlight sources and some other reflected light sources. I think my composition is looking good here, and my light sources are in a good place. So my next job is going to be to go through and color grade everything. Initially, I wanted to do everything in kind of a bluer tone because I feel like it's at nighttime, and bluer is going to help with that. But also, you'll see later on, I kind of go through and change that because I think the bluer is making them look dead. And I want more of their skin tone to come back. And I have this warm light with the green, so I figured a cool shadow is going to help accentuate that warm light much better. So you'll see later I change it to a cooler kind of purplish light in their shadows. All of this color grading, by the way, you can see I'm just putting in a hue and saturation layer, and I've copied that to every individual element in the composition. And that hue and saturation layer just shifts everything to blue, colorizes it to blue. And then I go through and I use blend if by double clicking on the right side of the layer, and I take away the blue from the black, the darkest darks in that. And that gives me kind of an overall saturated, colorized version of each one of those elements. With all of my color grading done, the next step is to move on to reflected lights from that magic that's happening up at the top of the picture. So same thing with this, I do hue and saturation layers, I do a colorized layer over the entire thing, I remove the green from the blacks using blend if, and then I go through, invert my mask, and then paint on each of the highlights that I want to see. I do that using an opacity brush. I paint more highlight than I need to start, and then I switch the colors from black to white, or white to black, and I paint it back away and then back in and then back away. And I use a lower opacity just so I can continually make it a little bit more dark or a little bit more light. Here you can see I shifted all of their shadows from that blue to the warmer tone. I just feel like they look a lot more alive now than they did, and this is overall much more effective. Also, I took about 8 hours in between starting doing the reflected lights, and then I went to sleep. Woke up, looked at it again, and noticed some things I wasn't quite as pleased with. One being their skin tone, the other being the harshness of some of the highlights. So I go back through and change some of the things I had done before. But I always find taking a break in between doing a big piece of art like this will help just kind of refocus my mind and allow me to see it with fresh eyes when I come back. a while to get all the highlights and reflected light done on this piece. Once that's finished, I go through and start adding a glow to every character. I just want kind of an outer glow on them, help them stand out from the background. I put that in with a soft brush and then go back with a fog or smoke brush and knock that back until it starts to blend into the background a little bit, but still gives me that layer of separation. And later on, I'll go back and reduce this even farther. All of my lighting and details are done, so my last few steps here, I'm going to drop the opacity of all of that green fog. I feel like it's a little bit too dominant, and then I'm going to go in and start putting some camera raw filter on everything. After the first time I applied that filter, I wasn't really happy with the way the Green Goblin looked, so I went back, reduced some of his highlights, and added a little bit more shadow to him. I keep comparing him to Doc Ock next to him and just trying to get those two very similar. Then it's one more round of camera raw filter and we're good to go. Here's the finished piece. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. If you like the content I'm making, feel free to show your support by liking the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you have any suggestions for future videos, leave a comment below. And as always, have a good day.